So we're lucky enough today to have Christine Bright from Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport to visit us to talk about the brain and the implications for brain science on how we approach coaching.
Great. Wayne, I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm so happy to be here with you all too. My name is Christine, and my job today is going to be to sort of make the connection between what we do as sport coaches and what we know about brain science, and sort of combine those things to help you understand why the things that work. All of the things that we do at the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport are based in the neurosequential model and the work by Dr. Bruce Perry. So the brain was developed from the bottom to the top and from the inside out. So even before we were born, our brain was developing in utero. And the first bit of the brain to develop was the brain stem down here on the bottom. And the brain stem is in charge of the things that we don't have to think about doing, the things that keep us alive and surviving. So things like having our heartbeat or digesting our food, we can think of that as our survival brain. That part of the brain's main job is to be in charge of safety. And then the next part of the brain that we work on is the limbic system. And the limbic system is in charge of our interactions with the outside world and sort of our initial reactions to the stimulus around us. So sometimes we call that the emotional brain. And the third part of the brain to develop is the cortex, or the prefrontal cortex, and we sometimes think about that as the thinking brain. That's where our rational thought is all based. Our creativity, our planning, our problem solving, all those types of things are up in our prefrontal cortex. And that part of the brain doesn't finish developing into mid-20s. Everything that comes in through the brain has to start at the brain stem. Then it moves through the limbic system, through that emotional brain, and then up into the prefrontal cortex. The idea here is that the brain information comes in from the bottom to the top, and each bit of this brain needs to be online for it to go up to the higher parts. And what I want to spend a little bit of time on here is our stress response system. Our stress response system is a bunch of neurological networks sort of like in the middle here, but I like to think about it as a periscope. So when we go somewhere new or experience something new, our stress response pops up and it just checks and it says, am I safe? Am I not safe? And if you're safe, it goes right back down. You recognized somebody, you felt like it was a place that was made for you. But if it sees danger, you're going to end up with your stress response activating, and it dumps a bunch of chemicals into your body that bring you into your fight, flight, freeze, flock, and dissociate. One of those things is going to be right for you, depending on how serious the stressor was. And when it stays up, it becomes stronger and stronger, and it sort of overpowers the other bits of our brain, so that when there is even a little thing, we may have a big reaction to it. So one of the best things we can do as sports coaches is help young people figure out how to bring that stress response down, so we can use all of the bits of our brain to learn the good tennis stuff.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got a little bit more complicated slide here, it looks like, but I'm sure you're going to simplify it for us.
I'll do my best. So now we have 3 brains here. And sort of the idea on this slide is to take a look at how much access we have to that thinking brain. When we're regulated, what that means when we're calm or alert or mostly sort of under control, our stress response is down, we feel like we have safety, we feel like we belong. When all those things are in place, we're able to access a lot of our prefrontal cortex and that thinking and creativity and that learning that we're really working on in sport. That's when we're regulated. When we're dysregulated, you can see that we have a lot less access to that prefrontal cortex. That's when things aren't going all of the way right. Maybe we're frustrated, maybe there's a conflict with with a peer or with a coach. Maybe we don't feel like the space is all of the way ours, something is off about it. That's when we're really a lot more nervous about our safety than we are about being able to take in new information. And all the way there on the end, this is somebody that this brain represents someone who's in a state of fear.
They're really
right?
in a state where they're kind of stuck, they're fearful, they're living down here
Right.
in this part of their brain and just can't get by it.
Right. So if you have a young person like that show up on the tennis court, you may ask them to do something and they will not do it,
Yeah.
not because they're a bad kid, but because they can't hear you, right?
Yeah.
So coaches are able to get their points across to young people who are all of the way regulated. So our job, knowing that our athletes are not robots, right? They don't turn on when they come to tennis. Our job is going to be to start by making sure everybody feels safe and connected, and like this is a place for them in order to open up that top of their brain so that we can do the great work of coaching.
Yeah, makes sense. So I suppose the next thing you're going to tell me is that there's some tools we have at our disposal as coaches that help us work through those issues of dysregulation and turn the session into something where we have more opportunity for regulated individuals to learn.
Wayne, that's exactly what I'm going to do. The cool thing about these tools is there's stuff that coaches already do, and it's just sort of understanding the relevance to the brain science that sort of makes it easier to think about additional ways to implement them. But you're right. When young people arrive at the court, we can assume that some are dysregulated. And so when they arrive, the three things that we often advise programs to think about are the ways that they use movement, connection, and dosed stress. Movement is the best because it's part of sport anyways, and there's a specific type that we know that really matters for especially the lower parts of our brain, and that's patterned, repetitive, and rhythmic activity, right? So for tennis, there's lots of things we can think of, right? Any sort of rallying activity, any sort of ball bouncing, any sort of catch or throwing, that's all movement. And we know that's good for the bottom of the brain because it goes way back to in utero when we were all of the way safe in womb. And our brain made a connection between that feeling of safety and the beating of the heart of the person who was carrying us, right?
And we love this too because we love rally activities, right? All sorts of anything that is repeatable is a rally to us essentially,
Yes.
right? And so now you've got the makings. You've got movement
There it is.
and you've got some kind of a rhythmic, pattern to it.
Fully.
Perfect.
That's
Okay,
the best.
good.
That's why sport can be so healing. The next bit is the connection, right? And that can and should be a connection with peers, or a connection with coaches, and just a sense of belonging in a space, right?
And the coach can even be part of that, right? I mean, a lot of times we find when we rally with kids, the two kids are having a little trouble with it, maybe not quite connecting, but the coach gets involved and it's a three-way thing. And now it works really well because the coach can kind of correct the activity, but also makes a coach connection to the children doing the activity.
Yeah.
And the third one?
The third one is dosed stress. This one we do in sport too, right? We start with the warm up and we build into more complicated activities. But we like to think about this one especially as a way to help a stress response come down because we know that the opposite of overwhelming stress is not no stress, it's dosed stress. And so the trick is figuring out how to help a young person have the right dose of stress so that they can tolerate it and then come back down to their baseline before they get another dose of stress.
When we go to the court, if we bring a positive attitude, if we use names, if we're being enthusiasm, right? If we're personal and personable, if we're respectful, all of that somehow leads to a good session. What's the science behind that?
Yeah, for sure that stuff leads to a good session because it's based in science. So what you're talking about is making sure that young people feel that they have a place that they can safely learn, right? So that helps the whole bottom part of their brain. If they feel like they belong and if they feel like their emotional and physical needs are going to be met by somebody greeting them by name and by being excited about what's going to happen, that's going to help that stress response come down and it's going to give them access to their whole brain. So what you bring is going to be reflected back to you. And that's why it leads to a great session.
Because I think what they don't realize is how important it is to lead by example. People follow you, right? They like that. That's good. That makes them feel good. What's going on there?
Yeah, great question. So the positive and confident stuff, one of the reasons that works so well is something called emotional contagion. And the word contagious is right in there. So you can see that it's sort of the leaders emotions rubbing off on the young people that are on the court. So if you show up positive and confident, guess what? The young people who've arrived are going to feel more positive and confident themselves. We know that when young people experience predictability, it's easier for them to bring their stress responses down and engage with the learning. Can we use predictability to lower the variables or lessen the variables that are around the practice? Right? So when you do what you're talking about with that same pattern over and over, and maybe you even tell the young people what the pattern is, what to expect, the more you can do things like that, the more comfortable, the easier it will be to relax their stress responses and to engage with the learning.
Yeah, so what you're basically saying is there's going to be enough unpredictably in the lesson itself, right? In the content, where the balls are being fed, what the other players are doing, and all that stuff. That's a lot to deal with in itself. So if we make some part predictable, then the other part's a little easier to handle.
Exactly.
What are the most important tools that we can kind of go back to and use if things aren't quite in a learning mode out there? We're not quite getting there.
Yeah, I think if you have a group that comes in a little disengaged or with a little extra energy, I would always start with finding a patterned, repetitive, rhythmic activity, and especially one with a partner.
The way we teach it with our coaches is to say, vary the environment, right? The environment is everything, including the court, the net, the equipment, the configuration of players, how many players there are, what positions they're in, how many coaches mixed in with the players. What's the science that kind of helps us kind of put all that together and give a little new perspective to our coaches?
Right. The way that you're talking about sort of individualizing the coaching, even on the same court, right? You stand further back, I stand closer up, my racket's different. I have a coach on my team and you don't. However it works that everybody is at sort of their challenge level, but not their level of, they're not overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
They're challenged without being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
That's the very best thing you can do for skill building, but it's also optimal for helping build resilience, right? Because we want young people to experience stress, but not so much stress that it's overwhelming.
One of the things I like about your models is that it seems like we're really addressing individuals as individuals. And one of the things we tell our coaches is your job is to vary the learning environment out there to accommodate those individuals, right? We want to keep them at the level where they're being challenged at the right level for them so that they're learning.
By meeting them where they are skill-wise, you're also likely meeting them where they are in their tolerance level for stress. So you're asking them to work hard, but you're not pushing them over what they can handle. You're finding the sweet spot for their stress too. So this falls into the tool category of manageable patterns of stress, right? Yeah. It's the appropriate dose and then time for a break and then the appropriate dose.
Yeah, and I think we tend to think of this more in our adaptive programs, but it's true of all our programs really, right? In adaptive programs, on the same court, we may have a wide range of skills, a wide range of ability. But if we carefully attend to that, then we've got a very active court with people doing a lot of different activities on the same court. And that's great.
It is great, yeah.